Welcome to Soccer Morning on NASN and Kick TV. Here's your host, Jason Davis.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Soccer Morning, NASN at Kick TV on a Friday morning. A Friday morning in the middle of an international break. So that's what this means. Games tonight. Games happening tonight that mean things for World Cup qualifying in 2014. Of course, in this part of the world, we're focused on, well, if you're a U.S. men's national team fan, I imagine you're focused on USA Jamaica. Although, the United States has already qualified for World Cup 2014. No need to stress. Freewheeling. Just go in feeling free tonight as the Americans host Jamaica at Sporting Park in Kansas City. No Clint Dempsey. No Michael Bradley. No Omar Gonzalez. Some things that Jurgen Klinsmann has to work out. And he says he's going to go full bore at this thing and treat it seriously all the way through. He needs these games to get his team prepared for next summer. He only has limited time with them and limited opportunity to put the best team out there possible. Now, he's not going to be able to do that tonight, again, because of all of those absences, but certainly something can be gained. And you want to win. You want to foster that winning atmosphere. After the United States... The winning streak ended in Costa Rica. Now you get back on the right side of things. Hopefully the Americans will take care of business tonight. But if you don't care about that game, oh, by the way, we'd like to thank Galazzo for their support of our show. You can learn more about their all-natural drinks at vivagalazzo.com or connect with them at facebook.com/Galazzo or at vivagalazzo on Twitter. If you're not interested in the U.S. game, or if you're just an American fan who can put it in the proper context, okay, it doesn't mean that much. It doesn't mean anything for the World Cup qualifying campaign. Then there are certainly other things to be paying attention to today. Mexico is one of those things to be paying attention to today. Poor little Mexico. On the verge of missing out on a World Cup if they don't get their S together and do it fast. Tonight at the Estadio Azteca, Mexico hosts Panama in a do-or-die situation. New head coach. Vucetich takes the helm. They've got sort of a new feeling. Bring Rafa Marquez back. Okay. Ochoa's back. Okay. No Carlos Vela. I guess they gave up the ghost on that situation. Apparently the Vela thing was not necessarily Chepo's fault. Apparently. Because he would be there, you would imagine. So you, as American fans, certainly obviously Mexico fans are looking at that game. That is crucial. Seeing odd reports that only 40% of the Azteca has been sold to this point, which would be odd. We talked to Tom Marshall yesterday. He expected the place to be filled up with 100,000 Mexican fans, pushing El Tri on to try to beat Panama and save their campaign. And as an American fan, we've throughout this process, as Mexico has continued to struggle, and this is different than the last time around. Remember, Mexico did struggle a bit in qualifying for World Cup 2010. They had the Sven-Goran Eriksson experiment, which clearly did not go right. And you wonder how much of that was his foreignness and, how much of that experience informed their choice this time around as they switched from Chepo, stayed domestic, go with a Mexican head coach, makes it slightly easier culturally to handle that transition. This is different, though. This is all the way down to the end here. Here we are. Watching Mexico struggle. Mexico at home. Mexico at home used to be a sure thing. It's not anymore. What the heck? So for the American fans in the audience, and by the way, for the U.S. fans, we're going to talk to Will Parchman of Top Drawer Soccer in just a minute. He wrote a very good piece on sort of the tactical evolution or lack thereof for Jurgen Klinsmann, meaning lack thereof in the sense that Klinsmann has been very consistent throughout his 2-year tenure at the helm of the United States men's national team and has obviously affected some positive change. So we'll talk to Will about all of that. But I got to ask you, you wear red, white, and blue on match day. You wear your flag as a cape. You paint your face. You've got a Uncle Sam head that you pull out. Whatever it is, super fan. Can you possibly suspend the rivalry for a minute and root for Mexico to get through? Because my position, and this apparently is Landon Donovan's position as well, because he said it, that it's better for CONCACAF and it's better for the United States if Mexico qualifies for the World Cup. Are you going to root for, or not root for Mexico, but would you rather see Mexico fail and miss the World Cup? Or can you be practical about it? Maybe we need Mexico to qualify. Look, while I have always said the United States should not be judging itself solely through the prism of Mexico, and certainly not right now, the United States does need Mexico to push it along as a rival. The top of the confederation, look, it's not that deep of a confederation. The region is kind of weak. We know this. We're all aware of this. And unless Costa Rica is suddenly going to become year in and year out Mexico level, and no offense to Costa Rica, I know that's a good squad. They've already qualified. I don't think they're there. Costa Rica size-wise can't compete with Mexico. So unless Costa Rica is going to somehow fill that void all of a sudden, I think the United States needs Mexico to push it along. So can you possibly root for Mexico? Not root again. I keep saying root for Mexico tonight when you watch that game, because with the way that the way that the schedule works out, for whatever reason, well, we know exactly the reason. ESPN is maximizing their audience on a Friday night for international soccer. They're going to put USA Jamaica at 6:30 p.m. Eastern, which is a 5:30 p.m. kick in Kansas City, and then Mexico Panama is at 9:15 Eastern on ESPN. So you'll be able to watch those back to back. So you'll be able to watch whatever the Americans do. Again, qualified, fine, whatever. Want to win the group? Okay. So does Costa Rica, by the way, and they've got Honduras. Honduras can go a long way towards booking their place if they can beat Costa Rica tonight. James H. Do Alabama fans hope for LSU to get a BCS game so the SEC is stronger? Doubt it. No, I think you're wrong about that, James. At least for part of it. I mean, how else do you explain the SEC chant at all times? Look, when Mississippi State fans are chanting SEC, that's a little ridiculous. But I think there is certainly, it's not even about mutual respect. It's about, although I think that a lot of fans do have a mutual respect for Mexico. But rivalry is rivalry. It's intense. I'm not saying that you should root for Mexico to qualify. I'm not telling you to. I'm not making that decision for you. What I'm asking is, do you root for them to fail? Do you want the Schadenfreude? Do you want to see them fail? Because there's a difference between Mexico can go do their thing. If they get in, great. And actively rooting for Panama to win tonight. And for it to come down to the last match day with Mexico clinging to a chance to go play New Zealand in a two-legged series. By the way, New Zealand, I'm not sure about that challenge. They drew the Ventura County Fusion 1-1 yesterday. So that's probably not a good sign that New Zealand's going to pose much of a threat. But still, it would obviously be more stress, cause a much more difficult qualification process for Mexico if they had to go to New Zealand. Anybody has to go. Look, I mean, even whatever New Zealand does here against, I don't know, whatever New Zealand does here against the Ventura County Fusion, that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be easy for Mexico or whoever goes down to New Zealand to play. And that game is a very long trip. It's going to be a very weird situation, a very weird atmosphere there in New Zealand. James says, my wife is Mexican, so I'm obligated to root for them. No, see, look, I don't know. I'm going to take issue with you, James. This is James H. Nobius on Twitter. You're not obligated to root for Mexico. Now, if you don't want to be in the doghouse, I guess you have to fake it. But you're not obligated. Come on. You're a U.S. national team fan. She's a Mexico fan. She could go root for Mexico, and you just stay. Don't root for Mexico. Just put your hands up and say, I don't have a dog in this fight. Dylan says, I really, really want to say no, but I have to. It just feels natural to root against Mexico. Okay. Yeah, look, I mean, again, I'm not going to blame anybody. It's rivalry. It runs deep. Let's all watch Mexico fail. Ha, ha, ha. We can all point at them. In the long run, does that damage CONCACAF at all? I don't know. Fetch says, to the point where I will be waving a Panamanian flag when they play us if I need to. Okay, there you go. Let's take a break. When we come back, we'll talk to Will Parchman from Top Drawer Soccer, the tactical evolution of Jurgen Klinsmann as head coach of the U.S. men's national team at Soccer Morning, North American Soccer Network, NASN.TV, and Kick TV. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
Let's begin.
Welcome back to Soccer Morning on NASN and Kick TV with Jason Davis.
Jason Davis back, Soccer Morning, and joined now via telephone from the great state of Texas, I believe. You are in Texas, right?
That's right.
All right. Will Parchman from TopDrawerSoccer.com joins me. Will wrote a very excellent piece on sort of the tactical, I don't know, we're going to call it non-evolution or is tactical adjustments, relative minor adjustments that Jurgen Klinsmann has made in his 2 years in charge of the U.S. men's national team. Before we get to all of that, which is a little nerdy, Will, admittedly, I got to ask you, I got this question out there. Mexico's hosting Panama tonight. Their World Cup lives are on the line. Can you get yourself to the point where you can accept not rooting for Mexico, but certainly wanting to see Mexico qualify because it's ultimately good for everybody in this region?
Well, yeah, I think there's that sort of catch in every U.S. soccer fan that it just feels weird. It just feels strange to say, to cheer a Mexico goal or to feel like that's a good thing. I think that's something that you kind of have to get past at this point, because that was kind of born out of the fact that Mexico was really good for a really long time. And that's kind of been ingrained in us to kind of look for a pullback, kind of a little bit more parity. Now that's changed. Mexico's, they're kind of in a little bit of disarray. They brought back a lot of the exiles, but they're trying to figure it out, kind of where the U.S. was maybe 5-10 years ago. So I think at this point, whatever they say about the rising tide, rising all,
lifting all boats.
The ships go with the tide, whatever that
rising,
that
yeah, the rising tide lifts all boats. Yeah,
yeah, there you go. So I like that theory where CONCACAF is concerned. I think teams that come out of tougher qualifying regions like in South America, they do better typically at the World Cup because they're not quite as shocked by the level of play. I think when you play teams like El Salvador consistently, that can kind of give you a false sense of security. So I absolutely think it's in the U.S. best interest that Mexico is good again. I don't know whether actively rooting for them is something that many people are going to be able to do, but I definitely think them winning would not be maybe as bad of a thing as it may seem.
Well, I mean, I think it's the rational thought process of, okay, rising tide lifts all boats, and Mexico being good is good for the region, especially since Mexico is the team, of what we've got here. Outside of, Costa Rica's already qualified, but they're the team that has the best chance to make any noise in the World Cup, and certainly that would help CONCACAF down the line. The better CONCACAF teams do in the World Cup, I think it's our job, I guess, to do that. While the average fan who's not writing or talking or analyzing can just go about their day and say, down with Mexico. I hope they get beaten 5-0.
Yeah. I think too that the U.S. soccer is still kind of fighting a PR war in a sense globally, and I think it helps too. I mean, you look at FIFA rankings, and I know those are kind of prosaic in a sense, but it matters for World Cup seeding, and a lot of that's based on reputation and just kind of how far wins will take you. And I think that CONCACAF is still kind of struggling a little bit for world recognition. And if Mexico's down, that takes even more of a hit, and people are wondering, how valuable is the U.S. run in CONCACAF? Are they really that good? And people, I saw kind of some message boards over in England, people taking shots at the winning streaks, and how valuable are these wins? And they couldn't do that in Europe, and yada yada yada. And there is some validity to that, but I think that Mexico being good sort of helps validate CONCACAF in a sense, maybe towards the top. And the U.S. can kind of use all the points it can get at this point, just because it is, a rising nation in a sense, but we can kind of use, I guess, all the PR points we can get.
Now let's get to your piece here on Jurgen Klinsmann and his tactics while in charge of the U.S. men's national team. It's been 2 years, and you have these nice bookends, Will. The first game, which was against Mexico, a friendly, was that game in Philadelphia, and then the most recent 2-0 in Columbus. And from looking, but across this time span, and certainly the players have changed, and he's brought in some, he's played guys out of position, and he's made a lot of adjustments. What have you gleaned from Jurgen Klinsmann and his tactics so far?
Yeah, I think if you look at kind of Klinsmann on a macro level, he is kind of a mystical guy. I mean, he's kind of prosaic in a lot of ways. He likes to think about top-down models, and maybe not quite as much on the nuts and bolts, and a little bit more kind of on the idea of the whole thing. So with that in mind, you've seen him experiment with some things that I think maybe Bob Bradley was a little bit more reticent to do. But at the same time, it's always kind of been tethered to this 4-2-3-1. It was the first formation he ever used against Mexico 2 years ago was the 4-2-3-1. And you saw it wasn't a friendly, so, he was going to experiment a little bit, but you saw that he was so interested in using it that he deployed Michael Bradley as the advanced central midfielder, which, obviously, if you know anything about Michael Bradley, that's not his ideal role. But he wanted to use it. He wanted to see it so badly that, he stuck Bradley under Edson Buttle, who started that game. And you saw him kind of tactically adjust over the years. I mean, it was never going to be an exact 4-2-3-1. He deployed 3 destroyers in midfield at times, which is probably not to his benefit, but he kind of realized that wasn't working, so tweaked a little bit, found kind of Dempsey playing off the striker, kind of dropping into the hole a little bit, so that Dempsey kind of became the central attacking midfielder. But you always kind of saw him tethered to that 4-2-3-1, and I think you have to give him credit for that, because Bob Bradley kind of tried to tinker a little bit, and they would kind of fall back into the 4-4-2 a little bit. I think for as much as Jurgen talks about kind of these grandiose ideas, and you kind of have to wonder, is he narrowing it down on the practice field? I think he's done that, and I think the players have really kind of taken a cue from him and really kind of taken off the 4-2-3-1, and you kind of seen the results.
Do you think that this is the culmination of sort of his tinkering and his looking to find the right mix? I mean, we give I've given Klinsmann grief before for sort of seeming dogmatic and not necessarily not that he's been married to exactly the same formation or the same approach at each and every time, but he seemed a little overly dogmatic. And then, whether or not he's got the personnel to play that way has always been kind of an open question. Have those two things converged, or did he just look for the right guys to mix to a system he already had in mind?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think over the last 2 years, you could make an argument that either has been the case. I think it's more that he genuinely wanted to figure out what worked best with these guys. I think it was a little bit of confirmation bias in the sense that he wanted the 4-2-3-1 to work. But remember, when Klinsmann came in, a lot of people were saying he was a 4-3-3 guy,
right?
And that he had run that formation before, that he had seen it work, and that it was kind of this Dutch formation of the future that everybody was talking about. I remember my buddy Greg Seltzer was all about it. He's still all about the 4-3-3, and it's a great formation, but it was never really what Klinsmann wanted. You saw it even from the first game that he coached. And I think that, it can get a little bit dogmatic, but you look at kind of where it's gotten. And I think the true measure of a successful formation is what the players do when things get really, really tough. When you start losing games, they start lapsing back into what's really comfortable. And under Bradley, he tried to implement the 4-2-3-1 late in his tenure, and it never really stuck because it really wasn't his tactical ideal. He's a 4-4-2 kind of guy. So the formation, regardless of what he wanted to do, the formation would gradually settle back into a 4-4-2, which was kind of detrimental. We started playing long ball. The results were kind of erratic. You look at what Klinsmann's done, it's a 4-2-3-1 all the way. I mean, they're comfortable with it. You saw in the second half against Mexico, came out of half tied, kind of an ugly first half last month. And same tactical rigidity. I think that's impressive, and that's kind of the legacy that he's left over the last 2 years, is that even when he leaves, whenever that is, I think that this is so ingrained kind of in the network of this team that it's going to stick around. I think that's pretty impressive.
Well, I got to come back to the personnel again and ask you if you foresee a future where, I mean, even if this sticks around, the 4-2-3-1 sticks around, is the United States going to be in a position where the available personnel can fit it as well as this group seemingly has come around to?
Maybe not. It's entirely possible, when Dempsey shuffles off, that you won't have somebody as comfortable playing in the hole. I think the thing that the U.S. has going in its favor is that always been long on defensive midfielders. You've always had really solid guys that can kind of hold. I think that's why Bradley was so enamored with the empty bucket when he initially got into charge, because it was just the easiest thing to do. You have a lot of central defensive midfielders. I think the trouble is, and the trouble still is now, I think what Klinsmann's finding is that finding wide midfielders is really tough, especially on the left. You played Dempsey there, you played Donovan there last month, and that's all well and good, but they're not true wingers. They want to pinch in. So I think even despite that lack, Klinsmann still made it work. They asked guys to sort of stay tethered to the touchline until maybe the last 25, 30 yards, and then asked them to come in. And at that point, the formation in the attacking third kind of takes on a different tenor, where you've got guys diving into holes, and maybe it doesn't look exactly like a 4-2-3-1, but that's kind of the ideal, and they'll kind of fall back into it in that way. So I think as long as you give the guys a little bit of fluidity, especially in the attacking third, I don't think future coaches would have a problem deploying a 4-2-3-1 in any of its iterations and seeing some success.
Yeah, and certainly we've seen this team, I mean, through the Gold Cup and some other sort of, different incarnations of this team. We've seen Klinsmann make some adjustments. I mean, I recall a game, and I don't remember who it was, where Jose Torres was sort of playing an inside left, and he wasn't, normally where a wing player would be, and Klinsmann just didn't have one, so they adjusted accordingly and made it work.
Yeah, and in fact, Torres played on the left in the first game that he ever coached for the U.S. And it wasn't the only time, but you watched that game, and Torres really wanted to come into the middle, which was fine. So what Klinsmann did is he adjusted, and he had Castillo on the left and kind of pushed him up a little bit, and then moved Jermaine Jones a little bit, scooted him a little bit over the left to cover. And what that basically created was this sort of misshapen 4-2-3-1 in the attacking third, where Edson Buttle was playing up and Torres was kind of underneath him, and Bradley kind of dropped back into his regular position. That's kind of a good example of how formations kind of change, become amorphous when you don't have the exact personnel. Which, to be honest, the U.S. is going to struggle in any formation to have cookie cutter personnel, just because the U.S. pool, as it has always been, is just a little bit misshapen. I mean, you're not going to have a true winger in one pool, and you may have a hold-up striker, or you may not have a real number 10, but you may have a right winger. And I think until the U.S. gets to the stage where it is producing guys where you can basically just plug them in any formation, I think the coach is going to have to choose a formation that he likes, and then try to fit guys into positions where they can be successful.
And there you go. That's Will Parchman from TopDrawerSoccer.com. Go find his piece. We'll put it up on the Twitter account and wherever we can, and read about sort of the bookending that Will did with the first Mexico game with Jurgen Klinsmann in charge, and this most recent one, and the tactical evolution. Thanks a lot for your time, Will. I appreciate it.
Yep, appreciate it.
All right. Let's take a break. When we come back, Colin Udo will give us a preview of African World Cup qualifying. Starts tomorrow. You all know about Egypt, Ghana. There's some other good tilts on the schedule. Don't go anywhere. Soccer Morning, North American Soccer Network, NASN.TV, and Kick TV.
Welcome back to Soccer Morning on NASN and Kick TV with Jason Davis.
Jason Davis back. Soccer Morning with American Soccer Network, NASN and Kick TV. And I'm on the line now. It's a busy time. Colin Udo from ESPN, Kickoff Nigeria, and Supersport joins me to talk about African qualifying in the final round of CAF qualifying as these teams get ready to make their bid for the World Cup. Colin, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
I'm good. I know that you are currently currently covering the Nigerian team as they get ready to play away to Ethiopia. I believe that's tomorrow, the first leg of that series. Ethiopia, a team that sort of has been underachieving for a while. How much of a danger do they pose to the Super Eagles?
Well, they are the proverbial banana peel. The kind of team that you think you can walk over easily, and then you go there and they surprise you, just like they did with South Africa. During that group phase, everybody thought South Africa would be the team to come out of there, but they went to Johannesburg and drew 0-0, and then beat South Africa 2-1 away from home. In fact, if it wasn't because they lost 3 points from feeling an ineligible player, they would have won that group at a canter. So they are a very dangerous team. They are very quick. Very, very quick, very young. They have very good possession of the ball. So they're a team that everybody needs to be very, very worried about.
Is the away environment particularly notable in any way? I mean, is there something special about going away to Ethiopia that will make it more difficult for Nigeria?
Oh yeah. First of all, they are a very high altitude country. I think they have the highest elevation above sea level of any country in Africa. So it's very, very difficult to play against them at that stadium. And then, of course, the pitch is not very good. It's very bumpy. I was there 2 years ago, the last time Nigeria played them, and the Super Eagles were very lucky to come away with a 2-2 draw. They had to score at the very last minute, with the last kick of the game, to get away with that point. And then, look, you have to be in that stadium to understand what I'm talking about here. It's absolutely buzzing. I mean, when they're playing, that stadium is heaving all the way with the fans. So, three very strong factors that any visiting team going there should be very, very worried about.
Well, before we get to some of these other matches that are involved that are on the schedule for African qualifying, I have to ask you, Colin. I think most people are sort of when they see what goes on with CAF qualifying are a little stunned at how difficult it is to get out of that region and make it to the World Cup. Obviously CONCACAF is not a very deep region, but we have a 6-team round robin to finish things off. Europe obviously has groups, and then playoffs for second place teams. But we're talking about winning a group, which is difficult enough by itself, and then going and playing. I mean, some of these matchups: Ethiopia, Nigeria, Ghana, and Egypt. These are incredibly tough matchups.
Very, very. Every year CAF always seems to change around the qualifying format, and this year is a different format. The last time was a straight group phase. The winners go progress to the World Cup. This year it's you play the group phase. You play the preliminary stage first, and then you play the group phase, and then you play the final knockout where 10 teams go through and meet each other home and away. So it is really difficult to qualify. You're going to have some really, really strong teams that will make it to the World Cup. For instance, the Egypt-Ghana matchup is going to be, for me, I consider it a tragedy. One of Egypt or Ghana will not be at the World Cup. So I think the solution to that would probably be for CAF to fight for more places at the World Cup. Maybe get Africa 10 spots, because you get Africa 10 spots, you're guaranteed very, very good representation. But five just means that some really good teams will not make it there. Yeah,
certainly the lobbying in the halls of FIFA from these confederations as they hope for more teams. I mean, you could argue that South America is underrepresented and Africa is underrepresented, and Bladder's telling Asia to go for more spots. So
and Europe is overrepresented.
Yes, okay, you could say that, but then again, the Platini and the Europeans will say, well, we have lots of quality here as well. It's a difficult mix, certainly, but I think we could all agree that Africa deserves more spots than they're getting, especially when you, again, as you said, Ghana and Egypt, one of those teams is not going to make it to the World Cup, and this is obviously down to the draw for this final round. Out of these matches, Colin, which one for you is the most is the tightest? Is it Egypt and Ghana? Are they the closest together and therefore make for the hardest match to pick?
Of course, I mean, there's no question about it. Egypt-Ghana is it's a game. It's tight. It's a game that nobody would like to call. Certainly not me. So, because these are two very, very good teams at the peak of the powers. And it will probably take a slight error or maybe just a slight edge from one side to get ahead of the other. And unfortunately, for the moment, that seems to be Ghana suffering those troubles because they've got their almost the hard ripped out of their back line. And then also key player in midfield, Kevin Prince Boateng, is not going to be available. And then they've also got some goalkeeping issues. So I think right now Ghana are looking very vulnerable, and where Egypt, in contrast, are very stable, very organized, very well prepared. So, I mean, if you look at it on that, all things considered, you have to say that Egypt are in a very good position to go through at the moment.
Well, I mean, all the more important for Egypt to take advantage of the first leg, considering Ghana is pushing for that second leg to be moved to a neutral site by virtue of the issues in Cairo at the moment. How likely do you think it is that game gets moved? And if it does, how detrimental is it to the Egyptian chances?
Well, I think FIFA and CAF are going to consider take a lot of things into consideration before they even think about it. Egypt will have to give some really serious security guarantees. I think the worst that will happen is that the game might play behind closed doors, but I think it is still going to play in Egypt. But for having to play it outside of Egypt, Egypt are a team that at the moment, yes, the crowd drives them on and helps them, but they're a team that have become used to playing in turmoil, and I'm not so sure that playing outside of Egypt would have the same detrimental effect it would have like maybe a different country. So Egypt, I think, I dare say, are probably actually planning for life without having to play their games at home. So I think they should be fine.
Yeah, right. They are certainly conditioned at this point. Looking at some of these other matchups, I mean, I know that there is maybe I'm not up on my news, Colin. Is Samuel Eto'o playing for Cameroon or not playing for Cameroon?
Yeah, he is. Well, I can't blame you. I mean, I'll probably be making the same error myself because one moment he's retired, the next moment he's back, and it's not for the first time.
Sure.
Eto'o had issues with the Cameroon Federation and the coach. Apparently, he was trying to also influence team selection by getting Carlos Kameni, the goalkeeper, to play where the coach said, no, that's my decision. I decide who plays and who doesn't play. So, but he's back. And, at one point, Eto'o was even having, when he was in camp, he was even having his own food brought to him from home because he accusing the Cameroon Federation of trying to poison him. So, it's bizarre, really, but that's what I mean. I've never heard of that in international football before, where a player is accusing his own federation of trying to poison him, and he had his own food brought in from his house. But that's how Eto'o relates with his federation in Cameroon, and I think he's too much of a divisive influence. And if I were the coach, I'd say, look, leave Eto'o out. Let's play this without him. And win or lose, I think Cameroon are better served, going forward without Samuel Eto'o.
Yeah, I do know. I do remember hearing that the president of Cameroon had to get involved, or at least certainly his office had to get involved to talk to Samuel Eto'o to get him to come back into the team. And as because of the figure he cuts and how big of a player he is and how famous he is, I can agree with you that he might be too divisive in a locker room. But how do you keep him out? And certainly, how much will that affect Cameroon in this playoff series? Yeah, look,
I think his coming in might be a big influence. Look, if you're a team, any team at all, and you're playing against Samuel Eto'o, you have every reason to be worried because he's a top quality, world-class international striker, and he's proven it over and over and over again. So if Cameroon can get Eto'o playing without his ego and without his other, his role and the entire attitude and behavior, then yes, he can be a critical asset for them. But if they can't eliminate that, then he'll be more of a hindrance to them than an asset. So if Eto'o, the asset, is playing, Tunisia should be worried. If Eto'o, the liability, is playing, then it will be 12 against 10 against Cameroon.
These other we were talking about how difficult it is to pick Ghana in Egypt. I imagine that you'll be picking Nigeria no matter what issues Ethiopia poses. Who else are the favorites for you right now?
Like I said, I'm going for a slight edge with Egypt. I think they're actually a more stable team, a more organized team, and they're playing better over the last recent months since Bob Bradley has been there. He's done a remarkable job. So I'm going with Egypt.
Okay.
Burkina Faso, Algeria. As much as I think Burkina Faso have improved, I think they got to the African Nations Cup final almost by default. They barely won during the group stages and just squeaked through to the final. So I think I'll go with Algeria there because they had a very, very good World Cup qualifying run. Tunisia, Cameroon, it's a bit tight there. I'd love to go for Tunisia, but I think if Cameroon, after the president has spoken to Samuel Eto'o, he's come back, I think he might get himself to play for the team rather than for Samuel Eto'o. And if he does that, I think Cameroon, I'll go with Cameroon to advance. Which other one is left again?
Nigeria.
I think that's just about it.
I think you had Ivory Coast and Senegal. You have a pick there.
Oh yeah, Ivory Coast, Senegal. Yeah. Of course. It's hard to bet against Ivory Coast, of course, when they're playing, especially with all the issues Senegal have got with Demba Ba, Pape Cissé, and so on. They've got some really good players, but I think Ivory Coast will be way too strong for them.
Well, there you go. That's Colin Udoh giving us an idea of what to expect for African World Cup qualifying. He's at ESPN and Kickoff Nigeria and Supersport. Thank you, Colin. I appreciate your time very much. Thank you.
You're welcome. Anytime.
All right, let's take a break. It's Soccer Morning, North American Soccer Network, NASN.TV, Kick TV. It is an international Friday. Games are coming hot and heavy. Are you ready? Are you ready to talk about diving? Let's talk about diving. Don't go anywhere. Be right back.
Welcome back to Soccer Morning on NASN and Kick TV with Jason Davis.
Back on Soccer Morning, Jason Davis with you. Thanks again to Colin Udoh for giving us an idea of what to expect in African qualifying, which doesn't actually start today. So we've got CONCACAF qualifiers today, plenty of European qualifiers today. The African qualifiers start tomorrow. You've got Ethiopia hosting Nigeria tomorrow, Burkina Faso hosting Algeria tomorrow. I believe, be in sport for those games. Maybe at least for the Ethiopia-Nigeria game. I'll check on the schedule. We'll get a check on the TV schedule. Sunday, Cote d'Ivoire and Senegal, Tunisia and Cameroon. And then Tuesday, Ghana and Egypt. I'm not sure why Ghana-Egypt is starting a couple days later than everybody else, but there you go. There's your African matchups. Again, that's talk about a crucible. That's tough, man. I did want to run down some scenarios here. This is in terms of the World Cup qualifiers. What you've got, you got obviously some teams qualifying for the World Cup already. United States, Costa Rica, Japan, Australia, Korea, Iran, Argentina, all qualified. Here's your scenarios for this particular round. Belgium will qualify if they at least draw against Croatia in Group A in Europe. Germany and Switzerland will qualify with wins. Germany against Ireland and Switzerland against Albania. I believe Ireland's already eliminated. Let's see. The Swiss can also qualify if they draw or lose. They can also qualify if Iceland does not win against Cyprus, which I don't think that's probably very likely. In North America and CONCACAF, certainly Honduras will win if they beat Costa Rica and Panama draw Mexico. So if you are looking for that third spot to be locked up and for it to be guaranteed that if Mexico qualifies, they have to go through New Zealand, you need to root for Honduras to win against Costa Rica and for Panama to draw Mexico. So there you go. In South America, Colombia can get through with a draw against Chile, and Chile will qualify with a win. So there you go. It gets a little complicated. If Uruguay win and Colombia beats Chile, both Colombia and Uruguay can book their flights. So okay, yeah, it's a lot of math. It's a lot of math. Still getting some responses on whether or not you can suspend your rivalry and accept the fact that it's probably good for CONCACAF if Mexico makes the World Cup, and therefore not actively root against them to lose or draw tonight against Panama. Yes, I know you like to rub it in and see the pain. I don't know what would happen if we were in the reverse circumstances. If it was the United States that absolutely needed a result or probably a win in this particular round, at this particular point in the hex, how would Mexico fans feel if they were already qualified? They just go ahead and say, we're good, do whatever you need to do, or they actively root for the United States to lose? Because I think that's kind of the measure of the rivalry, right? And being on this side, and I need to talk to more Mexico fans, I'll admit it. Where's Maxi Rodriguez when you need him? Being on this side of the rivalry, I think for me, I don't have a full appreciation of how intense it is in the other direction. Because rivalry is supposed to be mutual hatred, right? Rivalry is supposed to be, well, we want you to lose all the time. You want us to lose all the time. It doesn't matter who we're playing or what the stakes are. We always want to beat you. You always want to beat us. And rivalry tends to be, it needs to be some kind, there needs to be some equality in the rivalry. Occasional wins for this side, occasional wins for that side. Not one team dominating the other. That's not rivalry. I don't care how close you are geographically. That's not rivalry. This is why people will tell you that prior to the 2004 World Series, the Red Sox-Yankee thing wasn't a rivalry. And I'm not going to go into Red Sox-Yankees. I know people get bored with that. But certainly people will tell you, certainly Yankee fans, we didn't care about the Red Sox until they started winning World Series because they didn't matter. They wouldn't win anything. The United States and Mexico have been trading off victories in competitions in this particular region for a long time. We've got the World Cups, can measure ourselves against the other one in the World Cups. And then, we can certainly talk about beating them. So do you want them to lose tonight? I don't know. Cheering for confusion and paranoia while little soccer brother USA is better at what they love most. That's Aaron. He's rooting for Mexico to lose. Raf says, no, but giving the rising quality of CONCACAF, it's only a matter of time before either Mexico or the U.S. fail to make it. I'm not sure about that. I don't think it's only a matter of time. Look, you've got 3 spots, 3.5 spots, okay? I think it would take a significant fall off at the same time, which I think is highly unlikely, for both the United States and Mexico to miss it. Now, if Mexico misses out this time, we know it's not because of talent level. It's because of the team dynamics and chemistry and bad coaching. It's not about talent level. So I don't think that this is indicative of the rising quality of CONCACAF. So that's part of the equation. Are you rooting for Mexico to fail because they're your rival? That's fine, whatever. But if you accept that they need to make it for the betterment of CONCACAF, the reason you believe that, the reason you should believe that, is because they remain one of the best teams in CONCACAF on paper. What they do on the field hasn't been impressive to this point, but they have more talent than anybody else. They have more talent than the United States. There's no doubting that. Adrian says, I've already had too much fun basking in Mexico's failure that now I just feel bad for them. Hopefully they make it. That's wow, that's hardcore pity. I imagine that's going to frustrate some Mexico fans, that kind of attitude. I did want to touch on this interesting story. Look, we've obviously got Neymar in Barcelona now, playing for one of the best teams in the world, under a spotlight that everybody can see. And there's some questions. Is Neymar a diver? Does he play act a little too much? Is he making too much of these fouls? I watched their Champions League game against Celtic in Scotland. It seemed to me like he was going over pretty easy. But then there's the matter of cultural attitudes when it comes to diving or simulation or whatever you want to call this. And Barcelona midfielder Sergio Busquets has moved to defend both himself and Neymar, claiming it's not play acting, it's being smart. And just to bring this back to USA Mexico, because that's what I can do, it's my show. Occasionally you'll see these discussions happen within the American soccer community, whether it's because of the CONCACAF Champions League or because of USA Mexico or USA, any Latin American country, any Central American country. The Americans need to be more cynical, less naive. We should be taking advantage of the referee the same way that everybody else does, because that's the way the game is played. Or you can be of the attitude, well, we're Americans, we don't dive. I remember Nike put out a commercial not too long ago, a couple of years ago now, maybe either right after or right before the World Cup, where check on the timing. And essentially it said, we're Americans, we don't dive. This is a badge of pride. Well, is the United States hurting itself? Are American players hurting themselves? They're not willing. And look, let's be completely honest about this. American players do take a dive. They certainly do play act. They simulate. They go down easy. They drag a leg to make contact happen so that they can get the. This is happening already. On what level it's happening is probably the question. But Busquets is saying, look, our attitude about what you're calling cheating is different. We don't think it's cheating. We think it's part of the game. And I don't know that there's any middle ground here. You either believe that diving is an absolute scourge and should be squashed at all turns, or you imagine that it's part of the game, that getting some contact and conning the ref a little bit is part of it. You're playing your advantage. You're being smart about it. Maybe not time wasting. Go down like, who was it that the Sporting Kansas City played in the Champions League not too long ago? Couldn't get the job done at home. I think they ended up with a draw. And it was like there was a player going down on the other side every 2 minutes. Maybe we're not talking about on that level, but then again, where's the line? Where's the line between diving and simulation? Diving and maximizing contact. It's not black and white, people. It's just never going to be. And what you see as a dive, somebody else sees as the right way to play this game because it's smart. Busquets insists it's unjust to label players as divers. Play acting? It's not play acting. It's being smart. It's a debate we shouldn't be having because that's not the real issue. It's all too easy to label people. So it's for Busquets, it's not diving. For Busquets, it's being smart. I'm not sure that most American fans, maybe we take too many cues from the English, because I think the English will be the first to call it diving. And we've taken our soccer cultural cues from the English and we look at it and we say that's diving. Yeah. Jonathan Tannewell with the assist. Real Esteli. So there you go. Let's see. I think we're going to take a break now. Good time for one of those. And when we come back, what we'll do is we'll talk to Michael Orr from Soccer Made in Portland, which is on the North American Soccer Network. We'll preview Portland, Seattle, big, massive, huge, impossibly massive, huge game in MLS as we get down to the wire. In Major League Soccer, playoffs are coming. Seattle looks terrible. What is Portland going to do? Don't go anywhere. Soccer Morning, North American Soccer Network, NASN.TV, and Kick TV.
Now, in my younger days, I used to sport it sad. When I went to school, I carried lunch in the bag.
Welcome to Soccer Morning on NASN and Kick TV. Here's your host, Jason Davis.
Like a Soccer Morning, Jason Davis, and over my right shoulder, I had to take a second to remember which one is right. Like, oh, the camera, no, wait, my right shoulder is Michael Orr from Soccer Made in Portland, world famous Soccer Made in Portland, which you can find on the North American Soccer Network, NASN.TV. Go look for that. Hi, Michael, how are you?
I think good. Regionally famous.
Well, okay. Regionally famous, world famous. Look, this is the era of hyperbole. We take advantage whenever possible. I mean, you know, we say that we cover the globe here at Soccer Morning. I don't know that we've talked any Asian soccer yet.
Hey, the A-League kicked off last night. So, hey, if you want some Australian coverage,
you know, it came up. It was like, oh, let's get Michael to talk Portland and Seattle. And then Michael happens to be an A-League aficionado, and they kicked off last night. So we could always go down that road. I'm not even sure I have a grasp on who's in the A-League right at the moment, Michael. But let's start with your local team, the Portland Timbers, who head into this weekend with a chance to sort of knock the rivals Seattle Sounders on their figurative asses after Seattle has taken two pretty bad beatings. From your perspective, the Timbers' perspective, is this an opportunity to make a statement, to continue pouring misery on the Sounders, or is it a trap game?
Ooh, I mean, trap game I think probably doesn't apply. I mean, I think any Portland and Seattle game, I think both teams are going to be up for it. I don't think there's any worry on the Timber side that they would maybe say, oh, well, look at these two bad losses in a row. Now we don't have to worry about Seattle, and we'll just focus on Salt Lake. I don't think that's a realistic possibility. But it is definitely an opportunity. And to be fair, I think last weekend's game was an opportunity missed for Portland. I mean, the game was certainly exciting. The Vancouver game, I mean, right. Exciting and highlight goals from both sides. And Camilo's being the best of the bunch. And they left 2 points on the table there in Vancouver. And just looking at the table right now, they'd be sitting tied with Salt Lake with a game in hand with those 2 points. So in that regard, it's definitely an opportunity, because at the end of the weekend, Portland could be on 53 points by themselves at the top of the Western Conference with a win against Seattle. And so that's going to make Seattle feel bad in general. As long as Seattle doesn't win, even if Portland gets a draw against Seattle, then the Sounders will not get the Cascadia Cup. Vancouver will win that. So there's a lot of chances to kind of make it seem even worse for Seattle than simply just a bad result against Portland would be otherwise.
Yeah, you mentioned the Cascadia Cup. That's obviously part of the wrinkle here. This is not just any other game, and so therefore the trap game phenomenon may not apply, because Portland's never going to look past the Sounders. But I imagine that there is an element of now, especially not just because of the Sounders' misfortune in the last two times out. I mean, they've given up 9 goals in the last 2 games. But because of sort of the way things are resolving, the Timbers, their eyes have to be lighting up just a bit with the possibilities here. I mean, are they going to overtake RSL for first place? I mean, it's there for the taking, right?
Yeah, I mean, they've got a game in hand at the moment, which, of course, is the game against Seattle on Sunday. But then the Timbers host Salt Lake next weekend. So, a good result against Seattle, and then a chance to play head-to-head against the team on the top, or if it's a win for Portland this weekend, the second place team. I mean, I don't know necessarily about the Supporter Shield, because I don't know exactly what New York's schedule looks like going down the stretch. But it's certainly there, and that's a couple of weeks ago. Portland had this really nice run through the middle of the season, and then things kind of slowed down a little bit, and it was kind of looking like, all right, third place is probably a good aim, and trying to avoid the play-in game, and now all of a sudden it's all there, and a chance to embarrass the rivals and do sort of the unthinkable of taking a team from being one of the worst in the league last year to top of the league table.
And Caleb Porter deserves all the credit in the world for turning this team around and making them a legitimate Western Conference contender. And certainly, if you're in the Western Conference and you're competing well, that makes you an MLS Cup contender, Michael. And I don't know. Are you because we went through this the year, the calendar, or the MLS schedule with a lot of people talking up Portland, and certainly it was a relative thing. They're so much better than they were last year. They're so much more consistent than they were last year. They're getting results on the road. That's something they weren't able to do. But there were a lot of draws, and it made it difficult to kind of see them as an elite team. Are they for you? Are they an elite team?
They certainly can be. I'll put it that way. I mean, I think that in every single game, regardless of the opponent, they've got a realistic chance to win the game. And I think we've seen that all year long. Now, they've had a tendency to either fall behind early and have to claw back and get draws, or get ahead early and allow stuff late for draws. So, I mean, they've got 14 draws this year, and no one else has more than 11. So, they've lost a lot of potential points. I mean, if you just take a couple of those games and give them 3 instead of 1, Portland's on close to 60 points right now. So you can look at it that way and say, wow, they really are an elite team. Except that the reality is they've only won 12 games. So I don't know. It's when they're on, they're great. This Sunday they're not going to have all of their not necessarily all of their component parts that kind of make up the sort of regular whole.
Right.
That when that group's together and healthy is one of the better teams out there. So elite. I mean, I think that would mean there's an expectation that they would win any game. And I don't know that there's an expectation that they would win every game, but there is an expectation that they are in every game. They're at least the equal of any team out there on any day.
That may be the ceiling in this league right now. I mean, I look at these standings. I don't see an elite team. I'm certainly with the way Seattle has played recently, they're not elite. LA can be gotten in certain circumstances. Certainly they haven't improved. I mean, they haven't impressed over the course of the season. RSL is a good team, but they have their weaknesses, and there's nobody in the East that makes you say, well, I really want to put some money on them. You feel like you're going to be just throwing it away because it is a crapshoot each time out. So there may not be an elite team in this league, and Portland may just be in that sort of group of 5 or 6 at the top that have a legitimate shot to do this if they can get a couple of breaks. Now, you mentioned not having all of the component parts on Sunday. So I have to specifically ask about the status of Darlington Nagbe. And then, Seattle comes in with their own knocks and absences. No Brad Evans and no EJ, no Eddie Johnson based on national team duty. Eddie Johnson now has an injury. Does one team have sort of the advantage in terms of the battle of injuries or absences? Not really. I mean, because for Portland, they're missing Ryan Johnson, who hasn't been starting recently, but is certainly an acceptable professional option at forward. I mean, Max Arrudi's been starting up top, but that's an absence that has an impact, at least in depth or potential options for Porter. I think more importantly, Rodney Wallace isn't going to be there. He's with Costa Rica, and when he's here, he's the starting sort of left wing, left forward, however you want to describe it. He's in the lineup when he's here, and he will not be. And then there's sort of a combination of an injury to Darlington Nagbe that it doesn't seem to be serious, and he did train yesterday, or on the other day rather. So I think he'll probably start, but Diego Valeri's had this sort of lingering groin issue, and he started some games. He didn't start against Vancouver, and he didn't really look very good when he did come in, maybe with 20, 25 minutes left. So, it's not that there are, 5 or 6 guys that are totally gone from the lineup, which was the case earlier this year for Portland and the sort of down stretch that they had. But, it's just kind of, when the Timbers work really well, they've got everybody together. It's Will Johnson and Diego Chara and Diego Valeri and Nagbe and Wallace. They're just all there on the field. And when that group's together, they're fantastic. It's not that they can't be good without it, but it means they'll probably start Khalif Al-Hassan. There's a potential of, guys like Ben Zemansky or Sal Zizzo maybe getting a start if, guys like Valeri or Nagbe aren't seen fit to start. So it just kind of introduces more questions than I think Porter probably wants to have to answer at this time of the year. But on the other hand, a lot of those guys have played in different stretches and done well. So I guess Portland has the advantage in that regard, but it's, both teams are missing pieces that they would certainly prefer to have. Yeah, I mean, I do think that it's interesting to note the kind of different trajectories here. Seattle comes in sort of needing anything positive to happen at all, just for their confidence, whether they're sort of a playoff lock or not. I mean, none of you can say that yet. They're not mathematically in. Nobody can feel overly safe in this league, but you would expect them to get in, and Siggy therefore has to just find a way to turn the ship around. Whereas Porter maybe can think about, okay, well, if I'm in the playoffs, I need these guys healthy, like a Diego Valeri, for example. I mean, is there a choice to be made there? Well, do I rest him feeling fairly confident about our playoff position, or do I put him out there to make the team better because we have an opportunity to go for A, first place in the West, or B, the Supporter Shield?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a more difficult decision this week. I think last week Valeri was a bit of a surprise not to start, and it turns out that he kind of had a little bit of a downturn in his recovery, and that's the reason he didn't end up starting, whereas he had the previous games before that. So, but in that case, they had kind of a full complement of players in Vancouver. So you could leave him out and play Al Hassan, but the rest of the team is the same. This week is going to be a little different, like I mentioned, because of Wallace missing. There's going to be some shifting around, and because this opportunity is there. I mean, it's kind of been this balance that the Porters had to manage over the last month and a half, where the questions have really been, are you trying to win the Supporter Shield now, mm-hmm. or do you just want to be in the a secure playoff position, top three playoff position? Now, as close as the points are, everybody just wants to win, and if you win, hey, tomorrow you might be on top of the table, or you might be in fourth if you don't. So I realize it's a lot tighter than simply making a decision one way or the other, but I just can't see, unless he's really not fit to go better part of an hour, 70 minutes. I mean, Porter is probably not gonna push it, because I think at this point, I mean, they obviously want to beat Seattle, but if you're making some changes anyway, maybe you can shift things around a little bit and bring Valeri on in the second half. In my mind, there's no chance he doesn't play at all. Mm-hmm. But it's just a question of whether he can start. And yeah, I mean, if you win and you go top of the table, all of a sudden you almost have to go for the Supporters Shield. Right. I mean, this is a club that has no trophies. And they have a couple of second division. Not to mention
that if you do make it all the way through, you get that MLS Cup at home. That would be a massive deal in Portland, I imagine.
Oh, absolutely, of course, yeah.
I got a couple of. Well, let's start with Max Cerruti. You mentioned he's getting some starts. He seems to be playing fairly well. You could tell him, say better than I how well he's fitting in. But certainly it seems that Portland's getting way more out of him than Toronto was ever able to. The same goes with guys like Ryan Johnson, and there's a history here. What is it about that dynamic? And then specifically Max Cerruti, how has he fit in?
I mean, I think the dynamic is the system, honestly. Yeah. I mean, and that's kind of cheesy, and people have said, all this Porter ball stuff, which, I mean, Caleb Porter hates the term Porter ball, but it kind of stands for something larger than just putting guys on the field. And so I think, guys who, not that they've been bad necessarily, but haven't been either best utilized or totally effective, Ryan Johnson, Rodney Wallace, even just being here, have found ways to be super productive, because again, as cheesy as it sounds, it really is sort of a system, a team-oriented thing. And it's not like we always hear Salt Lake talk about it's the team first. There's no individuals. And I understand that. The Timbers aren't saying that. That's just the way it actually plays out on the field. Yeah. And that's how you've got 4 guys with 8 goals. It's just
and no clear-cut MVP candidate on a team succeeding.
Yeah, you can make a case for a bunch of guys. So I think part of it is the system has allowed individuals to play without a lot of pressure. I mean, I think Diego Valeri has a lot of pressure on him, both as a designated player, simply by the designation, and also just the role that he plays requires a lot more activity and a lot more influence. But other guys, have been able to sort of be passive in their involvement, and when they're playing well, the team can sort of shift and get them the ball, and if they're not, there are other guys who are available. So I think the system allows for these guys to kind of flourish without huge expectations. For Cerruti, I think it took him a couple of games to kind of get a feel for things, and I think that's more just in general. He played like 30 minutes in Toronto and wasn't necessarily match fit. So I think there was a little bit of a process there. And, the way Toronto plays and the way that I'm sure he'd been training in Toronto is not the same as the way that the Timbers play. So I think it took him a little bit to get kind of a feel for being an active part in the, laying the ball off, playing with his back to goal, high pressure. And it turns out that he's really good at those things, despite also being extremely talented and able to play off the last shoulder and stuff. But that kind of play isn't quite as much of an emphasis for the Timbers. So after a couple of weeks, I think he sort of settled in. And we saw with that, sort of the flick goal against, I guess was it LA a couple weeks ago, at home. And that was just a spectacular goal. So it's obvious he's got talent, but what Porter really needs is a guy who doesn't mind not shooting for a while and laying the ball off to the likes of Wallace or Nagbe or Valeri or what have you. Mm-hmm. So yeah, he's super talented, and I think people were disappointed, sort of on an emotional level, that the Timbers traded Bright DK because he was a link back to the second division, and he's such a nice guy, and he'd overcome so much with injuries, but. That was a no-brainer every day. I mean, you have to take a guy with a potential ceiling as high as a Rudy's, if you can get him, and they've done so, and I think plugged him in pretty nicely.
Okay, last thing, the Cascadia Cup standings. Where does that sit? You mentioned that Portland can keep the Sounders from winning it, and it'll go to Vancouver if they get a draw. So
yeah, I don't have it up in front of me, but I think Vancouver's up by 2 points right now. Portland was mathematically eliminated. A little while ago.
So it's down to Seattle and Vancouver, and basically you just the Timbers in besides the MLS implications want to play spoiler.
Yeah, I mean if Seattle wins the game against Portland, they'll win the Cascadia Cup. But otherwise, in either of the other two possible results will result in Vancouver winning the cup, which would be the first time they've won it in MLS. I think they haven't won it since 2007 or 8 or something like that. So. Yeah, I mean, it's like you said, it's a chance to play spoiler. And in addition to, you could prevent Seattle from winning the Cascadia Cup, and you could go top of the table at the same time. Other than winning the Cascadia Cup yourself, there's not really much better you could ask for if you're a Portland fan.
And it's the 100th game for the Timbers in MLS, if I'm correct. Right?
I don't know, but that sounds about right.
Okay. Well, that's what that's what the internet tells me, Michael. So let's just go with that. It's a milestone all the way around, and
it is.
I'll be anxious to see what kind of tifo the Timbers Army bust out for that game. They always do for the Cascadia games. Thanks a lot, Michael Orr. You can go find his talking on the Timbers at Soccer Made in Portland, which is on the North American Soccer Network, and go do that right now. As a matter of fact, right after we're done with the show. Michael, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, let's take a break. When we come back, we'll wrap up this edition of Soccer Morning. More to come. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. North American Soccer Network at Kick TV.
Let's begin. Welcome back to Soccer Morning on NASN and Kick TV with Jason Davis.
Back on Soccer Morning, big international window weekend starting tonight. Games on Tuesday, obviously. United States, low pressure environment for the United States men's national team taking on Jamaica tonight, at least for the fans. I imagine Jurgen Klinsmann is still gung-ho about getting the job done and improving. And I mean, look, we've already asked, are you rooting against Mexico tonight? Because I think that game obviously means more, even for U.S. men's national team fans. But here's another question. What score line against Jamaica would make you feel really good about where this team stands and eliminate all of the angst that we typically get out of a national team performance? Because even if this game doesn't quote unquote matter, and even if the United States has already qualified, you know there's going to be that sort of hand-wringing, teeth-gnashing nonsense if they win 1-0 on a set piece and don't dominate the game, or can't create the chances, or don't have shots on goal, or Josie Altidore looks like he's, whatever, not effective. So I'm curious, what would it take? Is it a scoreline thing? Is it a performance thing? Maybe I can't avoid the game. Maybe I'll avoid the game, and then if it's 3-0, I won't have to worry about how those goals happened, and I can just feel good about where they were, where they are in this process. But no, I have to cover the game for Best Soccer Show on the North American Soccer Network and Kick TV, which we are planning to go on at 5:30 p.m. Eastern, getting things started for the pregame coverage. We'll be back at halftime and then postgame. So Best Soccer Show, Kick TV Talk on YouTube and Stitcher and TuneIn, and we're all fixed, right? Status update: we are all fixed on our Stitcher and TuneIn. We will be. All right, I'm being promised. 4-0, says Alan. Okay, 4-0. 4-0 is the number that will make you feel good about where the Americans are. Qualified for the World Cup, beat the worst team in the Hex 4-0. Then we feel good about ourselves. And then what happens on Tuesday? Does it not matter? Does it matter? Could still have some bearing on Mexico in their place. Don't forget, especially if there's a draw tonight. See how that goes. So yeah, tons of international soccer to watch today. Be keeping an eye on, certainly on Europe as well. We've already talked about Africa and CONCACAF. Europe gets all the glory. We can give a little bit of attention to Europe, but Europe gets all the glory anyway. And now Michel Platini wants to start, or somebody in UEFA wants to start a Nations League competition that would see international friendlies replaced by competitive matches. This is all from a Norwegian newspaper called Dagbladet. I don't know. The plans remain vague, but there is a concrete proposal to introduce the concept, which may see teams separated into divisions based on their seeding and then competing for promotion and relegation. The season would theoretically be played over 10 match days between August and June, and the winners of the top division would be crowned champions. A year-long international league played across what were previously friendly dates. This is an intriguing idea. Now, I'm okay with the idea of the competition, I think. I have to read a little bit more about this. But really, do these small countries, they want to lose their friendly dates to have to go play, Italy or Spain or Portugal or England? I mean, I don't know. Who gets to play? Who doesn't get to play? Is there a qualification process? Is it everybody? Did I miss that? It's everybody? It's very strange. Very strange. I don't know what UEFA is doing. Also, in the news, we'll talk about that probably next week. Maybe we'll delve into that a little bit next week. Trevor, put that on the list. Write it down. He's got actual pen and paper. He writes stuff down for me. Also in the news, New York City FC have hired a creative firm. Now, this is, you're like, why do I care about New York City FC hiring a creative firm? What does that mean for me? Nothing really. The New York City FC is not on the field yet. They don't have a stadium yet. They don't have a place to play. We don't even know what they're going to look like yet. But it gives me an excuse because it's the same firm who did a very cool advertising campaign. It gives me an excuse to play said advertising campaign. The name of the firm is Droga 5. Droga5, official creative firm for New York City FC, and the people behind this thing.
I'll be your dream, I'll be your wish, I'll be your fantasy. I'll be your hope, I'll be your love, be everything that you need. I love you more with every breath, truly, madly, deeply do. I will be strong, I will be faithful, cause I'm counting on a new beginning, a reason for living, a deeper meaning. I wanna stand with you on a mountain. I wanna bathe with you in the sea. I wanna lay like this forever until the sky falls down on me. And when the stars are shining brightly in the velvet sky,
Let's go ahead and I'll just go ahead and try to fade that out. It goes a little bit longer. Go find it. It's very cool. That's the campaign that they did, that Droga5 did with Puma a couple years back. Sort of a Valentine to football. That's a bunch of it's called Hardcore. Bunch of serious looking football fans singing an ode to the game. Very cool stuff. If they're behind NYCFC, at least we can look forward to some cool things coming out of that partnership. Whether you like the idea of New York City FC or not. More scores coming in that would make you happy. JC says 3-0 USA. Johansson, Donovan, and Josie score the goals. There we go. And as for whether or not Mexico qualify, Robert says, I don't care if they qualify. I don't think it makes CONCACAF look weaker if they don't. Looking for good performance from USA. Okay, Robert, the problem is, again, I'm looking a little bit longer term. If we send the United States, Costa Rica, Honduras, and let's say it's not Mexico, say it's Panama, to the World Cup, and let's assume Panama gets past New Zealand. If that happens, the potential for a deep run in the tournament is significantly hurt by that, in my mind. No matter what problems Mexico has now, they could turn it around pretty quickly in the span of a couple of weeks or a month and be a legitimate danger at the World Cup next year in Brazil. Okay, they didn't do well at the Confederations Cup. It's a thing. I don't know. That's the reason I think that it's important for Mexico to make it. But anyway, there you go. All right, that's going to do it for us. Make sure you go and subscribe to Kick TV Talk on YouTube. Thank you for joining us on another week of Soccer Morning. We'll be back on Monday. Thanks to my guests, Will Parchman, Colin Udo, Michael Orr. Go find their work. We'll spread out their Twitter handles and the like, and you can find them on their various topics. Enjoy the game tonight. Remember, Best Soccer Show, 5:30 p.m. Eastern starts the pregame. Join us then. Talk to you later. Bye.
Kick routines and the presence was fitting. It was I, the abstract.
And me, the 5-footer. I kicks the mad style, so step off the Frankfurter.
Yo, Fife, you remember that routine that we used to make spiff.